Welcome to the 5-8. Ladies and gentlemen, how are
Welcome.
you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Greg?
I want to ask you a question. Do you have $45.2 million I can borrow?
That is, you're better at doing Alex Jones than me. Oh, God, the meatball. He's
There,
just
there's
so
it's
awful.
been quite a week. How was your? It's been 2 weeks. How was your 2 weeks? 2 weeks away. What have you been up to?
I've been traveling a little bit and then picking up a sinus infection, which of course made the whole household believe I had COVID, which I knew I didn't have. So my voice is a little scratchy. But so everyone's been running around in my house in masks, and it's just been delightful. Uh,
Okay, so
yeah,
fun. This is what happens when you go away for a week.
I know.
All hell
This is
breaks
it.
loose.
All hell
Yeah.
breaks loose. Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah. I want to say to everybody watching, I picked the title for this episode. Every episode is like just basically whatever the first thing that pops in my head for the number is.
Hmm.
So LB thought that 16 Clumsy and Shy is too obscure. I think she's probably right, but I don't care. So, if you know what I'm talking about, you'll think it's funny, and if you don't, it doesn't make any difference really anyway.
Well,
Yeah.
I get to do the clock to my thing, and you get to sort of name the shows. I found you get the overriding veto on whatever you want, so it's good. I'm
I
into it.
do. I mean, it
Yeah.
could have been 16 Candles, but I don't know. It's a little, this isn't a John Hughes film, LB. It's just not. Um, although, yeah, well, whatever. Uh, we're
Oh
going
my
to talk
God,
about
people are giving
patriarchy
us super
smashing.
stickers. I love this.
I love these super stickers. There's some kind of new thing that YouTube just like every once in a while they'll say, "Hey, you've unlocked this new thing that you can do. Do you want to do it?" And I'm like, "Okay," and I don't know what it is.
I don't know. Yeah,
I don't know either. We
we
don't
don't
know.
we
We're
don't
we're, we're figuring this
understand
out
this
as we go.
platform, everybody. So
We're figuring
and
this
kind
out.
of we refuse to. So we appreciate that you guys are smarter, of course, in this than you are in all things.
Yeah.
And I hope, what did you do in your week off?
I honestly don't remember. No, I'm trying to. I'm taking some time off. I'm taking 3 weeks off from all things, and in a couple of weeks, and I'm trying to prepare for that.
Yeah,
So that in
it's going to
itself
be
is like
hard for you.
triple the
I
work.
don't think you're going to succeed. I think you're going to fail. I'm going to give you like 2.5 days, and you'll be back doing something.
Maybe,
Yeah, but I
maybe,
hope that you do. I hope you succeed and get your rest. I'm
maybe.
going to
Now
work my ass off because that's all I do.
I know.
Yeah.
Um, we haven't. This isn't one of the topics, but we have to at least acknowledge that an actual dictator from Europe came to a conservative conference and spoke and basically
Yeah.
said horrible right wing fascist things, and they all applauded and
In a
ate it up.
Dracula accent, by the
Yeah,
way. He sounded like fucking Dracula up there talking about his blood and soil speech. It was appalling how far the Republican Party has fallen. My God, this is an embarrassment. This guy's too. He's the low rent bag man. You know, he's not. This isn't even someone who's accomplished anything with his country of note. Other than just strangling it. Um, it's appalling.
yeah,
Shame, shame, shame on them all. I can't even be funny about it. It's so disgusting to me. I did
yeah. It
notice
kind
though
of
that
isn't funny.
they're putting see back last time they had the white supremacist stage, right? They had
The
the
Nazi
actual
stage, yeah, the
the
Nazi
actual
symbol.
Nazi symbol as a stage. Now they're trotting out this guy. It's not subtle. They know what they're doing. They know all about the symbols. They know who Viktor Orban is. They understand all this. They know exactly what they're doing. And the rubes are showing up for it, as they always do. And now they have did you see the guy in the cage? They're putting their performance art, because they're all performance artists, all of them, which takes
Yeah,
us into our first topic. We'll get into that real quick. This is all performance art. They all know it, but the people show up for it, like WWE. They just want that entertainment now. This is it. It makes them some kind of primal feel good thing going on with this base, right? And in this cage, you go, you put these headphones on. Did you see this, Greg? They give,
I saw a very quick clip of it, and
I listened to it.
I
They
have
give
not
you
listened.
these
I did not listen to
headphones,
it. Okay.
and you can listen to the crying and whining testimonies of the insurrectionists because they're facing a consequence. Cry me a fucking river. They're going to like with a guy in a cage performing actual tears and crying. And
Was he
so they
good?
can all have an emotional experience because these are psychopaths and they've worn grooves into their brains from their antisocial personality disorders and their borderline personality disorders and their narcissistic personality disorders. They just have these grooves in their brain, and their only sense of what it actually is to feel something is to mimic it from someone else, right? And then this is their emotional experience, so they can feel something about themselves, not about anybody else, not about the dead people that day, not about the Capitol Police who suffered injury and some of it permanent, and several of them dead as a result of the insurrection. They're not feeling anything for that. They're feeling it for themselves, because they've been so persecuted, so they're crying. So honestly, the only way to deal with these people is just say, cry harder, just cry harder, keep
Wait, but you
crying.
missed. The best part is that Marjorie Taylor Greene came.
Oh, did she cry?
No, she
Oh,
opened the
did
cage
she plant a
and
bomb?
offered. No,
Oh, what did she
she
do?
opened the cage, climbed into the cage, and offered succor to this poor guy who's been suffering. Which usually, like,
Did she really?
man in cage crying, strong woman opens the cage and comes in is usually something you don't see at a conservative conference. It's at a different website that maybe Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley are familiar with. But
Right.
it's so weird. It's so
Oh, we're getting
bizarre.
into it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't
it's a
know.
fetish. It's the whole party is a fetishization. Is fetishizing horseshit. That's the party. We're gonna fetishize horseshit and get off. Right?
Yeah, it's
There's
very
a
strange.
deviancy underneath all of this that it's why it's so strange to all us normies. It's it's a little off. Something's going on with these people. I'm telling you. All right, what are you looking for? What are you looking at? What's happening to you? What's going on? What happened to Greg Olear? He
I'm
lost
here.
his mic.
I'm here. Can you hear
Okay,
me?
we can
Is it
hear
better
you.
now?
And we can see you. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
Okay. All right, let's get into our first topic, guys.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. That's enough
Hopefully this works
preamble.
now. Let me just make sure this thing is.
All right, you sound good.
I sound good?
You sound as good
Oh
as
yeah,
you
it's working now.
Okay.
It's better now. I needed to use the muffled mic to do the Alex Jones voice so I didn't hurt everyone's ears. Okay.
All right.
Speaking of which, let's go. Did you turn the
wait, what are you drinking? What are you drinking? What are you drinking? Everybody wants to know.
This is just tequila, man. I'm not messing around today.
No, straight tequila. Go for
Yeah.
it. I'm having ice water with my straw, with my illegal straw.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Coralejo tequila. Like, good tequila.
Oh, that's nice.
I like to say it. It's got a nice bottle.
Okay, let's talk about evil Homer Simpson, otherwise known as Alex Jones. And this $50 million, near $50 million, not quite, just under, slap on the wrist, basically, because he's making $800,000 a day. Tell me what you think about all that, Greg. I'm dying to know.
Well, I think the first thing we have to do is remember what we're doing and how we got here, which is that this man, this performance artist, as he's argued before in court, he's argued in court to get out of paying people that he's a performance artist and that nothing he says should be taken seriously.
Crisis actor.
He's whatever, chaos agent, crisis actor, performance artist, whatever you want to call him. What he's not is a journalist in any way, shape, or form. He's an entertainer. That's what he is, right? Decided that Sandy Hook, the unspeakably horrible massacre of very young elementary school kids that happened there, he decided somehow that this was some sort of false flag and that it wasn't real, and went on his show repeatedly and suggested that the grieving parents were in fact making this up, that it was all a fiction. And the problem with that is that he's not in a vacuum. He has people that watch his show that believe all the bullshit that he says. And then these people who are, again, Their kids, their little kids, they were like kindergartners or first graders, got shot at a school. Like, I mean, we have to pause among the chaos to just, imagine how just unspeakably horrible that is, and how fucking outrageous it is that the goddamn Republican senators have not done anything to stop it. They clearly want it to happen, or they would have stopped it by now. So let's pause just for a second and remember that bit. Okay. Now, these parents are there, they're grieving. And Alex Jones, this performance artist, this buffoon, this clown, this professional clown who looks like, I don't know what he's taking or what sort of workout regimen he's on, but it's all upper body and no legs. And he looks like an inverted weeble wobble guy.
He looks like Humpty Dumpty. He does.
Yeah, but he ain't going to break when he falls off the wall. And splat maybe, but not break. And he riles this up. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine the emotional distress that these families are under. And this guy's doing that. He's just riling them up. And for what? I don't know. For clicks, for yucks, for money? I guess so, because he's making $800,000 a day.
Yeah.
He's worth something like $260 million, I think they said. Is that what they said? Or am I getting in it? I believe
No, between 200 and 300 million.
That's what they said. It's funny.
Yeah.
That number keeps popping up. That's 1% of Rosneft sale. That's the amount of money that Trump owed to Deutsche Bank. It's 260 million is a weird number.
That's the number that the Magnitsky, that was missing with Magnitsky, that he found and exposed.
One of these simulation things. I'm not suggesting.
We always come back to that number.
Certain numbers keep referring. Anyway,
yeah,
and I don't know. This guy, his lawyer gave the lawyer for the Sandy Hook people all of his emails, text messages.
That's
Basically,
right.
It turns out the contents of a hard drive that he'd given his other lawyer, all of it, everything, for going back 2 years, which, again, pretty sure January 6th, 2021 was within that 2-year interval. So
yeah,
maybe he's a little bit
we don't know if he was using a burner phone like the rest. We'll get into that. I think is segue into the next segment with that. But I want to go back to this thing that you were just saying, unless you have something more to finish up.
No. Go ahead. I mean, how fucked is this guy? I don't know.
Well, I think it's a really curious question of why he latched on to Sandy Hook immediately. This was the guy that was pushing 9/11. We're going to get hit by, he didn't say the date, but he said, we're going to get hit by Osama bin Laden. They're going to fly planes. He was spelling that out before it happened in 2001. And just, literally a couple weeks before. And now all of a sudden we have him, a decade plus later, going right at Sandy Hook right away. Why? Why was this? Of all of that, we had plenty of carnage and horror and things that you can deny. Why that? How did he know? Because that also was a moment where, you saw a longtime NRA card carrying people cutting up their NRA cards after that. There was a real moment there where we could have had change because it was such an atrocity. And in he comes and starts weaponizing that space. It normally would sink somebody, right? But now he's worth Rosneft money, right? Now he's worth Magnitsky money. So, and it really was because of that. He was too fringy before that. And although that sounds like that should have pushed him more in the fringe, it didn't. It brought him into the fold of more mainstream conservative media and started really radicalizing people around these conspiracies. The 9/11 truther was doing it. Again, it was fringe. The Sandy Hook as a hoax, it resonated more with people. And I don't know how he knew that. I don't think this guy has instincts that are guiding him. It's something more is going on with Alex Jones, not to create a conspiracy about the conspiracy theorist. It's just an odd, he's an odd duck in these places that he finds himself. And
well, he's he's riling up the crowd on the
Yeah.
eve of the insurrection too, which
That's
I think,
right. Oh, well, he's all in on the insurrection. We watched all that coming. We were like, oh my God. Because a lot of people everyone's in their bubbles, in any kind of sort of left or centrist bubble, which is I'm just going to ignore everything bubble, the independents. Yeah, we don't really care. They were not aware. And I think you and I talked with Michael Hayden and Luke O'Brien, who cover extremism, about this, of like trying to help them to communicate to people in this sort of larger bubble of more mainstream media how important of a figure Alex Jones had become to the Republican base. And there's no separating Republican from conservative now, guys. It's the same thing. So, and how much influence he had, and he was revered and making all this money. It just, no one bothered to listen to him. So if you would go into his channel and listen to him, I guess I stop our timer. You would see not only how dangerous he was, but how plugged in he was with the last administration, and Mike Flynn and Steve Bannon, and how it was this. They had their words worked out. They had the semantics. They had the battle plan for the discourse, for the info wars, right? They had that. He's always been in there ready to go with all of that. So it makes him a very dangerous character, especially because he knows what he's doing is lies and propaganda and horseshit. He knows it. He had to admit it on the stand. He knows. He's always known.
Yeah.
So why do it? I don't think it's just about the money. I think that these people are out to tear us down, or you don't go after. Listen, I'm going to speak from personal experience here, guys. There's nothing, all kinds of grief is horrible. And this isn't a grief competition. But when you lose someone to murder, I can't imagine, especially a little child, but a loved one, a family member to murder, it's a different thing. It's a different thing. You are traumatized on another level because it's this violence, and also it's connected to law enforcement. You're in the mix with this. Right now, the Parkland parents are still going through, I think might have wrapped, but I don't think so, the sentencing portion of the trial. That was what, 4 years ago now? 3 years ago, 4 years ago? It goes on, and you have to relive it and relive it and relive it. It's horrific. It's horrific. To attack a family member who's going through that about the murder itself and say it didn't happen, you gotta that's evil shit. I'm sorry. It's spiritual violence. It's spiritual violence in and of itself. So here you have this horrible act of violence terrorizing your family, terrorizing your mind, blowing your mind apart, because it's like impossible to conceive that you've lost a family member to murder. It is so otherworldly and awful. And then into that mix, you get either people who may know you or may not know you, calling themselves journalists, using their platform to terrorize you. That's another level. So there's 2 more trials coming up for this motherfucker. And I hope they completely strip him of everything. And just because he did that, he should not have a platform. Fuck all these people giving him, fuck YouTube, fuck everybody, giving this guy the kinds of platform that he has to terrorize grieving parents. It's not okay. So,
yeah.
And I know what I'm talking about here. And it is defamation. And anybody engaging in that, even being an audience member, even continuing to watch one fucking episode after the first time he did that, you're engaging with evil. You're engaging with evil. You can't come back from that. You just need to stop it. That's what I have to say about that. Let's move on before I
Yeah.
start crying.
No, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
All
All
right,
right.
next topic. Let's breeze through this one because subtext
I
means
want to get to
okay.
our guests too.
Me too.
Yeah.
Let's go through this real fast.
Okay. Great.
The texts are all missing, okay, from like all these agencies and stuff. So I just want to make one point here.
The
Okay.
Secret Service has friends, Greg. They have friends everywhere. They're all just in friendship circles, sharing recipes.
Acting Secretary Chad Wolf. I mean, these guys, it's so obviously a cover up that it's funny, you know. So it's almost like what are we
Yeah.
even talking about? This is the point that I want to make, okay? And I've been making this point for 5 years now. Every time we learn something new about this guy, meaning Trump, every time we don't think, wow, maybe he's not guilty. We always think, holy shit, he's even more guilty than we thought. This has been a continuous pattern for 5 fucking years.
Yeah.
And it's just getting worse and worse and worse. It's just when you think it can't get worse, it gets worse. It's like when I watch The Gray Man and I'm like, how can this movie get dumber? It just gets dumber and dumb. I don't understand this far along how the media just isn't like in on this, and it just hasn't woken up to the fact that this guy's a fucking criminal. Everyone around him is a criminal. The only people it seems like in that administration who weren't just outright criminals were the Opus Dei affiliated crew that were just there trying to steer him into doing their dread bidding, right? And that's it. That's who was and the entire country for the last 6 months he was there was being run by Cassidy Hutchinson, who's like what, 25?
Yeah.
So that's the deal. I don't understand. I don't get people watching this and being like, well, you know, let's both sides. I mean, that Doug Balloon, that New York pitch bot, if you're not following that on Twitter,
It's the greatest.
you're really missing out because he satirizes their propensity for both sidesing things, and it's just chef's kiss every time.
Yeah. Well, so with all that criminality, let's talk about how that's bad for Joe Biden.
Well,
which is what they do, right? That's the
Yeah.
pivot point. The pivot point is not just to both sides. The pivot point is, and this is what the pitch bot makes fun of, and here's how why this is bad for Dems, or here's why this is bad for Joe Biden. So again, this need to frame, right? So what I've been talking about for over the 5 years is this constant fucking framing that we're up against, right? That was so confusing in the beginning of like, what is this? What aboutism? And it was always like, what is this? What is this? Who is this Kellyanne Conway? It was like, and these people were highly trained in a technique out of Kremlin military intelligence agencies that was developed there. How they got so expertise at that, I don't know, but they're real fucking good at that right out of the gate. We'd never seen any of these ghouls before, and they came in ready. They were ready. They were trained in all of these tactics, and the CNNs and the MSNBCs and the I don't even care about the Fox News of the world. We're all like entertaining that and allowing their whole role as the fourth estate to just pivot onto this platform of just like we had. It was like the Alex Jones platform. It's like, it's entertainment, folks. Here we go. We're gonna entertain ourselves with our own fucking friends, and that's somehow journalism. Here's all our buddies. We're all going to be like you and I. Right?
Yeah.
You don't call this journalism. We're here just, I don't know.
We're hanging out at the bar on a Friday.
I plead the fifth of what we're actually doing here.
Yeah.
Everybody knows we have to drink when we plead the fifth. So, you know, it's like it's been insane. It's a madness. There's a madness happening in this nation. And I do like that we've had some folks in sort of the mainstream buckets, or definitely the mainstream buckets, coming out and calling this a cover up. And they're not covering up good deeds. You don't cover that shit up, do you, Greg Ollier?
I didn't want anybody to know that I was the one who gave Alex Jones the $5 million in Bitcoin.
Okay, so yeah, you don't cover up criminality. There's no need for. That's what that means. We're covering up the criminality.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's really blatant. Really, this is worse than what we witnessed with Iran-Contra. I mean, it is 10,000 Iran-Contras going on right now
Yeah.
because of all the agencies involved. I saw someone in the comment section asking, like, what is Chris Ray talking about? Chris
Oh,
Ray. Maybe
I
it was
have
on
that
our
on my
Twitter.
list. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, because I called that motherfucker out in 2017 now, didn't I? And I
You
got
did.
shouted down, and I'm like, he's the private attorney for fucking Gazprom. He was as an attorney hiding Chris Christie's cell phone. He's like in with Jared Kushner. What the fuck? What are you guys
The guy that was being investigated by the FBI fired the FBI director and put Chris
him in.
Ray in the job.
Put that
Even if he's a
motherfucker
good
in.
guy, you gotta go.
You
You
gotta
can't
go.
keep him around.
So this is where it does land on Joe's doorstep. Clean house, dude.
Yeah.
Clean house. I think it was Unc that came on Prevail or did a Prevail article with you, right? 4 or 5 years ago, where you were saying, asking my uncle, what can we do about this? You know, and for those of you who don't know, this was a former Deputy Inspector General of the National Security Agency. And he was like, you know, just get all those people out of there. Just clean out everyone that he put in, and the ship will right itself. And for some reason, Biden wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
And I do think that's going to go down. I think Pelosi's made some big mistakes. I think that's Joe Biden's mistake. I think everything else he's just been doing is actually quite a great job as president, considering what he walked into, this shitstorm. We have a land war in Europe, and he's handling that brilliantly.
50 years from now, historians are going to puzzle over what Dark Brandon means. They're going to be like, what is this? What is this? What is this?
Weird.
Yeah.
But it's okay. Clean house. They're not, you can't do this. Well, the Republicans get in, they'll do that to us. Well, not cleaning house is going to make sure they do get in. So that's why you have to clean house. You know, that's another reason. So it's not that it's political. It's that it's autocratic. It's about preserving our democracy and actually keeping your oath of office, right? To protect the Constitution. You can't have insurrectionists in the Pentagon, in the Department of Homeland Security, in the Secret Service even. You can't have insurrectionists in there, people aiding and abetting and plotting and planning. You can't have seditionists in there and be doing right by the Constitution. You got to clean those people out.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Head of the FBI? I don't know.
And look,
this guy needs to go. He needed to go on day one. He should never have gotten confirmed. Come on.
White House,
Whatever.
Sheldon Whitehouse took him to, gave him the Riot Act, which was very nice to see. Okay, should we move on?
We're moving on. We're moving on.
Okay, now it's time for our ad.
Oh. We have an advertiser. We have an advertiser, Greg Goliar.
No, do we?
We do. We have an advertiser.
Should we have a?
The problem is they come with bone saws. Let's see.
Should we have a trigger warning for this? I don't know.
This might have a little trigger warning. If you're a little queasy and you just drink, even if it's water, make sure you hydrate.
Okay.
Here we go.
This is Chunk. Thanks, Chunk. Okay,
Thanks, Chunk.
I know what you're thinking about Live Golf, the new golf tour funded by the Saudi royal family. Sure, it's sweet that so many golf gods like me are getting paid insane amounts of money to play golf, but what about the moms? What about the kids? Hi, I'm Phil Mickelson, and I'm here to tell you about the latest fairway fun from MBS and Friends. Live Golf Kingdom. Live Golf Kingdom is great for the whole family. At Live Golf Kingdom, our driving ranges are world class. Even the ladies can tee it up and take a few whacks, although the gals have to use the irons because the Saudis don't like it when women drive. At Live Golf Kingdom, we have the best mini golf courses on the planet. Navigate your ball through the dismembered Jamal Khashoggi body parts on the third hole, and you get a free Live Golf bone saw. If you hit the top of the scale model of the World Trade Center with the special 9/11 ball, the replica Twin Towers collapse into a pile of rubble, and you win a Live Golf Center box cutter. And get this, if you get a hole-in-one on the 18th hole, you literally strike oil. The kids love it. Between the golf, the sword dancing, and the orb fondling, Live Golf Kingdom really does have it all. So come on down to Live Golf Kingdom, or else the Crown Prince will have you beheaded. Just kidding. He only does that to civil rights activists, dissident journalists, and gays. And now, back to the show. Well, like my mom might say, I'm going to hell.
In a kerosene suit.
Yeah. We'll talk more about Phil Mickelson later, and Tiger Woods telling them to all to go fuck themselves. Seriously though, I felt bad about that video, and I'm like, God, this is too far? But it's like,
No.
We're not the ones who are in bed with the Saudi royal family. We're not
Yeah,
the ones taking the blood money, you know?
Again, like with Alex Jones, we apparently need to remind everybody who we're dealing with here and what they've done.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not going to just go
It's
away.
shocking that we have to remind people about this.
Yeah, it is. It is. Okay.
Okay.
I'm excited for our guest.
Me too.
She is the president of the Stop Online Violence Against Women, Shireen Mitchell. Welcome to the 5-8. How are you?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Hi,
Thanks for coming
Shireen.
on. Thanks for coming on. Now, you're going to talk to us about Facebook, which is something we have not actually covered on the show very much because some of it is too technical. And I think also we, like LB, I don't think even is on Facebook anymore at all, but it remains.
I've never been. I was on once, but I knew what it was from day one. I'm like, this is malware. I'm out of here. Yeah. But I did make my bones on Twitter. A big part of my bones and following came from me sticking it to Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg for about 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. They're not nice people. So, okay. No. So you have a couple of updates for us about what's going on with Meta, because Facebook is now Meta.
Yes.
And there's something called the Facebook Oversight Board. So what is that and what's going on with it?
Yeah, it's really fascinating. So the Facebook Oversight Board originally started while it was Facebook to address any of the problems for content moderation on the platform. And unfortunately, what has happened, and by the way, they spent like $130 million when they first started it. But remember, this was the Oversight Board that included Facebook. Now they're announcing they're doing another $150 million. They're going to continue to have this happen. But I think people missed the part when October happened and Zuckerberg announced that they were going to now rename themselves Meta. And this is after the hearings, right? After all those reports came out and Hogan went to testify before Congress, that they realized, in my opinion, that they were in trouble. So if you have an oversight board for your main company, that means that they should have some oversight over the company itself and have some say. But if you think about what they just did, changing to Meta means that right now the oversight board only looks at content at Instagram and Facebook, and they are subsidiaries of the main company. Mm-hmm. So who's monitoring the company now? Nobody. Right? So it's like we wanted this to happen so that we let people know that we were paying attention to the problems that were happening on Facebook, and people forget that Facebook was the major company that was then eventually owning Instagram, WhatsApp, and a couple of other now Oculus, a couple of other products. So what they decided to do is remove Facebook as the main company, bring it down to an app, and then have an oversight board that's like monitoring what's happening in Instagram. The challenges here is just watching the way in which, if you're paying the oversight board to monitor content, are they going to hold the company actually accountable for the actions that they are or not taking? Right?
Probably no.
Probably no. That's their moneymaker, right?
Yeah. Right? I mean, just think about that. Like, absolutely not. And so what used to be was there were third-party organizations that were trying to monitor, and that's where that hearing happened. There were researchers, academics, even journalists that were using tools like CrowdTangle and others to monitor, to see what was really happening, to hold Facebook accountable. So now they're saying, we're going to hold ourselves accountable. We're going to have this oversight board that does it, of course, of which we're paying. And we're going to try to come up with our own tool and come up with our own AI, which is what they're naming as Sphere right now. It's still in research. But so they're dismantling CrowdTangle, which journalists and researchers now have access to, making it difficult to figure out what's really happening on these platforms. And additionally, they're basically asking their Instagram people to participate in a survey to give off their racial and ethnic identities so they understand what's really happening on the platforms, because they clearly don't know, despite the fact that they had their own reports and knew, despite the fact that in 2016, those ads that they allowed Russia to use targeted Black voters, they knew that, and they had decided that they were going to take it seriously, to stop spreading mis and disinformation, and realizing that these foreign entities were interfering. So now we're not even hearing anything about what they're going to do around the mis and disinformation around elections anymore. They're being quiet about that.
Yeah.
They're not taking that seriously as much as they were before. They had all this ramped up and all these conversations. Why is that? Because now Facebook is no longer responsible, right? That there's an app versus the company. Meta is no longer responsible, based on what happened in October.
So can you remind us, where are they? What kind of lawsuits are still going on around some of this with Facebook, and where are we at with these lawsuits? Because it looked like we were going to maybe get some news, and it always just disappears. The Facebook stuff just keeps disappearing from the news.
It's really interesting, because I think once Meta was shifted, once they shifted to Meta, the lawsuits that Facebook is facing is just now Facebook the app, not the company. And that's why it's slowed down. And I think that in some instances, people don't realize why that disconnect. I believe that's the reason why they shift themselves to be a larger company over an app, because the lawsuits are still coming. They're still pending.
Yeah.
And so those things are still in the works. But if you shift away from Facebook being the main company, then the board is no longer responsible. The CEO is no longer responsible. The COO is no longer responsible, because there's a different company.
Okay. You mentioned this thing, CrowdTangle. Now you mentioned it on my podcast a couple weeks ago. And by the way, anyone who missed the podcast when Shireen was on, go download it, listen to it over the weekend. It's really good. What is CrowdTangle exactly? Like, what does that mean? Is that's the way that they're trying to get, to regulate the bad misinformation on the site? Is that?
Yes. So CrowdTangle was actually created as a third party. They purchased CrowdTangle. The president that was of CrowdTangle a year ago said they are no longer updating it. It barely works now the way that it used to. It was the thing that allowed people to see and be able to report the mis and disinformation, the violent content, the organized militias that happened, that we've seen in different places in the country. That's how they were able to capture it. But also, CrowdTangle was the resource that they had captured the data on everything that was happening leading up to January 6th. They removed some of that content and basically is dismantling it from working at all. Because again, they have Spear that, they're going to do it with their AI to take down the fake news and disinformation, not this external thing that everyone else can look into. So they alone can fix it.
Right. Did you hear anything about my friend Brett Petticord? He was on my show a while ago, and I think when I was hanging out with him, he was talking about how Facebook, the app, and Instagram obviously were separate entities, and that they're trying to apparently merge them to such a degree that if Congress were to say you must sell these two things to make them separate, like in antitrust, it would be technically impossible for that to happen. Do you know?
Yes, I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that. I mean, just think about it, because now the oversight board is the oversight for Facebook and Instagram. That's what the oversight board is. That the next 150 million now is making sure that these two things are integrated. And if people haven't, I know you guys said you weren't on Facebook that much, but if you look at the Reels, it's now integrated into Facebook. So even when you go through the feed, at the bottom of the feed, you can see Reels. You can also see TikToks, right? They're even feeding TikTok into it. Wow. So it looks like it's the same entity and not separate things. So now you don't have to go on Instagram to see any of these Reels. By the way, they also shifted that. They shifted Reels. So now almost everything you post becomes a Reel, and that Reel gets fed back into Facebook. They also made some other shifts where they're trying to make it look like what TikTok is. So they're definitely working towards doing that, so that when the question was being brought up that they need to be broken up, that's the example. By the way, one of the things they're not talking about, right, is adding WhatsApp to that, right, or Oculus. So, but the fact that they're trying to do this Instagram thing has a lot to do with the hearings, because remember, they were held accountable for the ways in which the children were impacted.
Yeah,
And
by
there's still
Instagram. Yeah.
and there's still legislation happening about how children are affected by their platforms. And then they all of a sudden wanted to create a new platform for just children to separate them from Instagram. And then there was a campaign against that. So they realized they have a tool that works for them, but now they're quote unquote trying to figure out like what is the bad things happening. But you have to agree to the survey so they can monitor that now versus what they were able to do before.
It sounds like what they're trying to do is, because Oculus is Meta. That's what Meta is, right? So it's like this virtual world of that Mark's, dream, right? But also it's, he paid an extra billion, maybe possibly more for that. And we don't know what happened with that money, except it funded Parma Lucky's, alt-right. So it's such a weird thing. But
Matt Gates' brother-in-law, Palmer Lucky.
Matt Gates' brother-in-law. Isn't that interesting? But it sounds like they're trying to bring the functionality of, because Instagram is where the youth is. They're not on Facebook anymore. So bring the functionality of Facebook into the Instagram, and then I could see Facebook end up becoming like Facebook Studios or something for some kind of other content, because I don't know that they need grandma and grandpa anymore. I just. I don't know, and I don't know about businesses needing. It's an interesting thing.
No, absolutely, and also the first purchase of Oculus, it was still sort of separate. The second version of Oculus, you actually have to sign in with a Facebook account to actually access that second version of Oculus.
Okay,
like they're integrating all.
They're taking the tool sets and putting them into the more rich environments, and just sort of saying this is what you're going to be on now. And
Yes,
and
and
Facebook
making sure that they're all connected. So you're logging in one way, but you're connected to every one of those. They're the same thing.
They're the same thing, and therefore Facebook isn't liable for anything, and there is no antitrust.
Yes,
gotcha.
But are people really using Oculus? Because I feel like Oculus is one of those things that isn't real, that doesn't actually happen. Like, I don't know anyone that's actually bought or used this stupid thing.
People use it. I've seen. I've seen people using Oculus. I think that it's one of those things that like eventually we'll hear more about it. Yeah. Right now, the big things that we've been listening to or people have been speaking about because of the problems that has existed is Instagram and Facebook. Like that's where our bigger problems are, especially with the election, especially with the hearings. Like that's the reason why they're paying attention, because that's where their feet is being held to the fire the most.
Okay. That's a pretty sweet gaming chair behind you, by the way, that you're sitting.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I think my son has the same exact chair. Pretty sure. Yeah.
Is it comfortable? I need to get one.
It is a comfortable chair. I had to change my chair, and this I am so happy to have this one. It actually has a footrest, so even on some days, if I want to put my feet up,
there you go.
Which, by the way, right now my feet is up.
Okay, good.
While I'm still drinking my wine.
My son does not have a footrest. Okay, let's move to the next topic.
All right, so you're sticking around with us for
yes, more absolutely. I'm here for this.
Before we do that, I'm so glad you're here. We did a quick introduction of you, but if you could tell people where they find you as well, so we don't forget that at the end, and we'll hit it again at the end.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So I also changed my title at the bottom, because Digital Sister is where I am. I am basically Digital Sister everywhere. Our organization is Stop Online Violence Against Women, and you can find us online at stoponlinebaw.com. And we also have a Twitter handle and Facebook. And you can find us on Facebook, but our Twitter is Stop OVAW.
Okay.
And you can find us there. But if you follow me, you can find all those things, because I'm always sharing
all those things. So just go to @Digital Sister.
I'm the original Digital Sister. If you just search Digital Sister, you will without fail find me and find everything else that we are working on.
I love it. And then if you could, just before we move on, I do want to hear this from you, Shireen. For online violence against women, what are you seeing as the biggest thing on the horizon right now that we should be paying attention to, and that possibly needs help or resources? Like what's the thing? What's the banner, right? If you, I know there's so many ways we could talk about this, and there's so many pathways into this, but just name maybe one of your top things right now that you're concerned about.
So the thing that we still work on and have been working on since 2013 is the way in which the platforms allow the online violence and harassment towards Black and brown women. Some of you have seen it and witnessed it recently with Lizzo and Beyonce.
Yeah.
Go back and take a look at that. The way in which Meghan Markle is treated on the app, the way VP Kamala Harris is. There is a ongoing campaign to target Black and brown women, and most platforms do nothing. And we've been desperately trying to get people to see how often it happens. And it's not just those high profile women, but it's like almost every time a Black woman decides to say anything on the platform, they are targeted and attacked. The other are journalists. We're trying to pay attention to getting people to see that they're like, especially journalists that are in nation states that are authoritarian. Their lives have been turned upside down, and we work with those people as well, journalists in America, journalists in other countries. So we see these targeted campaigns and how much it affects their not just their day-to-day lives, but their families, their children.
Yeah.
These are all really key things that we're constantly looking at and working on, not only trying to hold legislators accountable, because some of them participate in it, by the way.
Yeah.
But also the platforms. And so that's why like paying attention to Meta was really important, because we had literally sat down with Meta when they were Facebook, trying to convince them to sort of look at where these things were going wrong. And now we know they had the reports. They knew that AI was disproportionately targeting African Americans in particular, but they also knew about what Russia had done, and they were basically throwing their hands up and not doing anything about it.
Yeah.
So when their AI was protecting certain groups, they decided, well, we're just going to take that away because it was overly protecting one group. So instead of protecting everyone or shifting to make sure that Black and brown people were protected, they just decided not to deploy their AI at all. But somehow this fear is going to work out of nowhere.
It's because the name is so cool. Sphere, man. I mean, it's like a circle, but it's 3-dimensional.
But somehow this is going to work.
It's an orb, and they've got their hands on it, molesting it, right? And we're trapped inside of it. And I've seen this before.
We're all inside the metaverse of that orb, and so
that was. People don't know. That's why you had to have the Egyptian guy in there.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I can't even. All right.
Okay.
Well, listen, this is something that women face. It goes beyond just harassment and threats and all that. It can turn into in real life stuff. It can be organic. It can be driven inorganically through AI. It's horrible. And it takes us very interestingly into our next topic.
Interestingly, almost like we planned.
Almost like we knew what we were doing.
Yeah,
so I want to talk about here. I'm going to put my timer on, everybody. So we're going to talk about Kansas. So I'm going to let everybody know, because maybe some people don't know. I am from Kansas. So I grew up a good portion of my life from Wichita, Kansas, and then to Kansas City. I'm also the daughter of an evangelical pastor. Was Episcopalian, became evangelical in the sense of actually just what the gospel actually says and what Jesus, work for the poor, go and help people who are falsely incarcerated, that kind of thing. But of some large congregations, my dad was he's just fantastic in the truest sense of the word.
Can confirm.
Yeah. He's great. But that's my world, everybody. So here I am, a white woman, from the Christian center of Kansas, the heartland, 2 different areas. Johnson County is what really turned out for that vote and the midterms. And then Wichita, which, was incredibly conservative. I'm the girl who in school just was a vegetarian, and somehow that made me a communist, because that's the mentality there. That is the mentality in Kansas. It was there in the 80s. In the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I don't see that it's changed all that much, or we wouldn't have Josh Hawley, right? But there has been some transformation. So what was going on there in Kansas? This was a primary midterm. So Dems don't show out for midterms, although they will because of Roe, right, this time. And we've been showing up more. And it's a primary. It's like, this is when they put it on the ballot. Now, that's a very calculated move by the Republican right, which is the pro-life Party to stick this sort of thing in for the Kansas and to make it as confusing as possible. We've all seen the reports around all of that. And what happened? It was resoundingly defeated. I mean, it was just like a crushing defeat of this little agenda to kind of fix the Kansas Constitution so they could have forced birth there, right? For children who are rape victims, children. And I keep calling it girls, call it children, child rape victims, forced by the state to give birth to a baby for the state.
Yep.
Not by their religious institution, not by their parents, not by the little whatever, by the fucking state. Those are the semantics that work. Those are the semantics we need to start using. And I want to talk about how the permanence of this, right? That we need to start expressing this in a sense of permanence. And the party needs to get on board with this. This is the issue that will defeat these crazy fucking forced birth, pro-rape individuals and party that is looking to actually tear down and destroy our democracy. We know that the pathway to fascism goes right through a woman's body. You heard Rosanna Arquette giving that speech on our show. She's dead on. You've heard Ruth Ben Guyot, right, who helped with that speech, telling you this is it. This is the pathway to authoritarian and fascistic takeover. It always goes through the bodies of women. It always goes through our bodies, through our subjugation, through stripping us of our rights. But if you just say this is about losing our rights, right? You have to, that's not going to get people to turn out. It's not. I'm sorry. It's not. You have to say this is fucking permanent. Whether you're paying more at the gas and we see that price going on, or the economy, these fluctuations, okay, maybe my student debt. These are all issues that we see come and go. It's a thing that goes up and down. The economy is good, then the economy is bad. And blah, 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 blah. Americans are used to that. We're used to the roller coaster and the ins and outs of this sort of temporary situations, especially stuff that gets amped up and ramped up going into an election cycle. Forcing women to give birth to rapist babies or just any baby for the state to come into a woman's body and force her to give them a fucking baby. That's permanent. That's permanent. This isn't a flux, right? This is a permanent fucking thing. So it has to be framed that way. And when you frame it that way for people, guess who shows up? Fucking Republican women. Because I'm telling you, as the white girl, daughter of the evangelical preacher from Kansas, that wasn't a bunch of Democrats only showing up to defeat that. There aren't numbers for that there like that. That's a bunch of conservative Johnson County fucking junior league women, Republican women showing up, because guess what? They need abortions too, because it's health care. Mm-hmm. It's not murder. And they know what kind of women, because they're their sisters, they're their mothers, they're their aunts, they're their weird brother's girlfriend, right? They're their first husbands, right? They know what kind of women have been calling abortion is murder. We have to save the babies. They know what kind of women have been saying that. They know what kind of women cling to that. They know those women, and they know how fucking dangerous they are. And they know what kind of men those women are married to or enabling in some way. And they don't want those men making their decisions for them. Right? They know. We need to start talking about these women, these abortion is murder women. It needs to be women talking about these women. We saw them show up in front of the, Eric Swalwell taking on the disinformation of like, that's not abortion. Abortion's not healthcare. We don't stop women who are dying from an ectopic pregnancy from getting healthcare. Yes, you do. Mm-hmm. Yes, you do. You just can't conceive that you're that fucking moronic. And it also fucks up. It fucks up your fucking narrative of abortion as murder. You think of yourself as this. Well, we know you don't care about life. That hypocrisy was shown, and that whole argument, we're pro-life, fell apart when all those babies were murdered in fucking Sandy Hook, and you're still out there supporting the NRA. We know you don't give a shit about life. You want to control the women that you think your husbands are fucking attracted to because they're not touching you. We know who you are. We get it. We get it that this is your thing. This is your jealousy. This is your fake fucking pious shit because you're insecure about your own womanhood, because you decided to hitch your wagon to some troglodyte man that listens to fucking InfoWars and takes all those stupid ass vitamins. We got your number. We got your number, okay? I'm coming for you now. I'm coming for you. And you know how I know all this about you? Because all growing up and all the years I lived in Kansas, you assumed I was one of you. And I heard the shit you said in your fucking junior league meetings. I heard that shit. Okay? This is how we have to be now, everybody.
No, honestly, that was for you, because I can get a chance to speak now, right?
Please do.
You're sure now.
Because you're absolutely right. And we need women like you to call those women out for sure, for 100%. And I also I don't think people understand, like, even in the midst of the protests, you know, people were talking about Gilead and Handmaid's Tale. And I'm just like, do you know where I come from in this country?
Yeah.
Black women were forced to give birth.
Yeah.
The state already said yes to that before. They will say yes to this again. So it's just fascinating that when it was us, it was the state could do it. And now we're questioning that. And I really do need people to remember, like, tell Americans history. Tell the actual story that this country actually did that our founding fathers said that one of the biggest values that they had was every 2 years being able to have a new productive product of their flock, i.e. stock, us. And that was the most valuable thing that they had. They actually said that out loud, right? Black women were forced to produce up to 27 children in their lifetime while working in the fields. And it's always fascinating to me when people are pretending like that didn't happen. That's actually what happened. And if you go back and look at the citations of SCOTUS, you will look and see that they used antebellum laws starting from 1825 all the way up until women got the right to vote as the precedent to overturn Roe. Yeah. That means they were looking at, they were ignoring the 13th Amendment, they were ignoring the 14th Amendment, and they were ignoring the 19th Amendment to justify that 50 years of Roe was not enough in comparison to 1825. Who was being forced to give birth in 1825? My ancestors.
That's right.
And people need to say that. Like, this is the whole key about people trying to remove history from the school books or banning books, right? Telling different stories or trying to have fictional conversations. You don't need the Handmaid's Tale. Tell what America actually did.
Yeah. Good point.
Because, like, seriously, in 1808, the slave trade stopped. So what America decided to do was say, hey, well, we'll just use the current slaves we have to produce more.
Yeah.
For property value. And we need to really be honest. It's not just about where we are at this present moment, because I really do believe that they are wanting to take control of women's bodies.
That's right.
But it's because they had already done that before. Women not having the right to vote meant that they couldn't fight against these either.
It's
But
nostalgia for property. It's nostalgia for human beings as property.
human beings as property. And also that whole liberty thing, it's like liberty for some, right? Because this should be the conversation, not about states' rights versus the feds. It's about bodily autonomy from the state, period. Local state and federal state.
That's right.
This is about our birthright. The fact that someone has to write in the Constitution that we have a right is saying that we didn't have a birthright when we were born like everybody else. Everybody else got that right. But we have to go to court to demand that same and equal right.
That's right.
And that people at the highest court of the land can take that right away from us at any time. People should be screaming about that because that's absurd. They're not just taking bodily autonomy, trying to take bodily autonomy from women and people of color. They're also now trying to take bodily autonomy away from children.
That's right. And in doing that, writing, as I'm going to give this to Joe Scarborough, right? I've seen him do this because he's starting to frame it. Again, everything is framing. You've got to frame things right. And he's saying because they want a rapist bill of rights.
Wow.
And he's exactly right with that. He's exactly correct. So
but why they're calling everybody else pedophiles, though? They call everybody else pedophiles, but not the men who are actually raping 10-year-old girls.
That's right. And there is a thing, again, I get into the deviancy. There's some kind of deviancy with that quote unquote pro-life crowd, especially the women. There's something going on there that is, it's not like, because to not be able to conceive what it's going to be like for your own children, right? To go to school, and there's going to be a 10-year-old or 11-year-old child with an 8-month pregnant belly. And you're thinking, and this is getting normalized? This is the normal thing? Then there's something, do you want to see a child body ripped apart by a pregnancy? Is that your kink?
But that is the point, right? Because they care about children. They keep saying they care about children.
We don't want to see women dying on the operating table. No woman's going to be dying on a table because of course they are. Of course they are.
And they have been
already, and their wives already, and they're just women who just are living their life, right? As single women, they're going to die. And then you get that. So what, now that they know that that's a reality of the car that they caught as a dog chasing this car all these years, they caught that fucking bus. You caught the fucking women dying, and everybody's got a cell phone, and they're going to fucking film this. They're going to film it with her children crying at her bedside that mommy's dying because she can't have a procedure to save her life.
Exactly.
Because the doctors are fucking freaking out because of these forced birth fetish, fucking weirdo, deviant, rapist Bill of Rights fanatics, these religious fucking zealots. And what do they have to do now? Now they're standing in the state legislatures, I saw this today, and making an argument for the value of understanding that death is part of life.
Oh my goodness.
Religious fucking argument, his warped spiritual argument for why the state needs to make sure that the citizens, especially women, understand that death is part of life.
But not their life.
But I don't want
the life of something possible, but not their existing life.
So that you understand the value of life. That's the argument from the state floor, from the legislative floor. These are the people who were screaming about death panels when Barack Obama was president.
It's mind-boggling.
Not even just the hypocrisy. This is evil. It is. It's evil. It's evil. Anyone arguing for a 10-year-old to be forced by the state to give birth to a rapist baby is evil. anybody arguing that women need to die en masse in order for them to learn the lesson of life is evil. This
Absolutely.
is evil. We're up against evil, and we need to start calling it out as such. I don't care how many crucifixes those white women put around their fucking necks.
And also
It's
remember,
not your shield. It's
yeah,
not keeping me from calling you out or seeing through that. It's not a force field of piety. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. And nobody wants your husband anyway. Nobody's coming for your fucking husband. The reason he doesn't want to touch you has something to do with something altogether, something else. And at some point, you'll figure out you're a beard. I don't know what else to say to these women.
Maybe when they read Josh Hawley's manhood book, they'll figure it out.
oh my goodness.
Way to land the plane, Greg Olia. This is
But
why
also,
I do a
before
podcast.
we go away, don't
Yeah.
forget that Black women have already been dying en masse just
Right.
trying to give birth. And
Just
there are
trying to
plenty
be
of
mothers.
women that have been already, and sometimes abortion choices were because they were about to die. So we need to really be honest about the fact that that this is a not only difficult conversation to have, but really every person has the right to decide what happens to their body. No one else should ever have say. I don't care who you are. I don't care who you married to. I don't care what power you have. I don't care what state you belong to. No one has say over my body but me. And no one should have say over your body but you either. So women, don't sign on to something that you don't want to have happen to you. Because let me come for you and say what happens to your body instead. I bet you don't want that one.
No. Well, you would be nice.
I would be nice. But I still don't think they would want it.
They don't want it, but that has something to. That's a whole other reason.
I have.
They got other problems. They got other problems in there.
Before we
Yeah.
move on, regrettably, to the final segment,
Okay.
here, I have
Yeah.
only two words that I want to add to this spirited discussion.
Is it
And they
Michelle
are-
Bachman's husband?
Fuck Alito. Fuck Alito. Fuck Alito. You pompous, faux pious, fucking moron, incel, idiot, wannabe stand-up comic, faux religious, sanctimonious, ignorant prick. Fuck off.
Yes.
Just retire. Anywhere this guy goes again in public for the rest of his life, I hope people just boo him, like in The Princess Bride in that scene. Anytime he
Right.
goes to the fucking mall or the supermarket, boo, boo, fi. That's what he deserves for the rest of his
Right.
life. If he's going to stay in that job, then he deserves it. If he doesn't want to be treated like shit everywhere he goes forever, resign. Easy.
Retire. Take your check.
Yeah.
Thomas,
Well,
too, by the way.
they retire.
I'm
They
just
get
gonna throw it in
they're
there.
on the court
Please.
until they die, no matter what. But
Mhm.
yeah,
As long
retire.
as, and listen, Thomas just has to take Ginny with him. The problem is Ginny. Back to what I was saying. It's Ginny. She's the one who's got the head justices, John Roberts, whatever, in her purse.
I wonder if she ever texted Alex Jones. I guess we're going to find out.
Ooh.
Find out.
We're going to find out, actually.
Yeah.
We're gonna
That-
find
We are
out.
going to find out.
All
Damn
right.
sure
That was
I
a
can
good
land
one.
the
That was a good one.
I can land the plane.
You landed that one.
Okay. Now, what is the last topic? Oh, hook, line, and lie and sinker. Okay. We're
Okay,
going to talk
those
about
are
this
all-
golf.
Those are all golf terms, by the way.
They
but
are.
also there's some basketball terms in there and
There's
some
basketball.
boxing terms.
Yeah. There's terms, and it's a
Yeah.
pun, and it's all of these things. Good job, Opie.
And
That's-
stinker. But the stinker is a little thing.
The stinker is not a golf term, unless maybe you're with Trump.
Well, I think so. This came out of Greg and I. We have these calls, Shireen, in the early morning because I'm always up at 4 a.m. or 3:30 or whatever. And Greg's my East Coast friend, and I'm like, "Are you up?" And he goes for a walk, and then we talk, and then our rants to one another end up being this show. This is what we decided to do with our friendship. And it's I guess it's okay. People seem to like it. This is just literally truly is how Greg and I are.
Your rant was pretty good. You actually, I think the rant about the abortion thing was better live than it was on the phone.
Was it?
Which
Well,
is not always the case. It was really good.
I was editing in real time, by the way.
I know,
You
but
know how bad
it was okay.
it was
The
even
edits were
worse,
fine.
everybody. It was very salty.
The
at
edits were
4
fine.
a.m. when I had no voice. Okay.
We're fine. I wasn't
So-
sure. Shireen looked like maybe she was going to log off during the bad commercial, but she's okay.
No, I was good. I heard it.
She
Okay.
stuck with it. She
Well,
stuck with it. So, okay.
Here's what this all came from is just, and then I want to punt it to you, Greg, because you had
Okay.
the greatest line about Ari Emanuel and Elon Musk in there. But
Uh,
we're at a place now where we really are facing this regime change, and not a regime change in terms of an administration switching over, but a true regime change of a democracy getting railroaded over for an autocracy, right? And which will be a kleptocracy, because they're just going to keep putting all the money into the budget for the military and then siphon all that money into their own pockets and become oligarchs if the Republicans get in control, just like the Kremlin did when Putin took over, which is why they're having such a hard time in this war. So the fact that we're now to a place where we're starting to see our social institutions, our culture itself, sports, entertainment, the news has been going for a while, just start cashing checks and say, oh, well, people will forget about it. We're going to take the money and run, and we know that it's from a bonesaw regime or whatever it might, but we need the money. And so, or they don't even need the money. We're just like, there's a cynical sort of, everyone will forget about this. Now, the entertainment industry has been doing this for a while. We took a ton of Chinese money, a ton of Russian money, went back in the mid-aughts, and just sort of like cashing those checks. And it's corrosive. And at some point, here's Greg and I doing our little show, right? There's no money in this, but for Alex Jones, there's $800,000 a day somehow, magically, right? These things are connected. Of this sort of, as long as autocracy puts more money in my personal wallet, whether it's an agent, a talent agency, a studio, a sports franchise, well, I don't know what you call those things, the NBA, the whatever, that it's somehow it'll be okay, and people will just sort of forget about the wretchedness of where this blood money's coming from and what it also leads to. We need our artists and our athletes and our voices and our intellectuals with the corporate overlords that are like profiting off of them. We need all of that to get on the side of democracy and take a hard stance against these checks that are flooding in. If we're this easy to buy and there's no guardrails on that, it's going to be a real fast descent. It's going to be a really fast descent. Otherwise, the artists would be able to save that, as they always have. The writers have always saved, humanity in times of turmoil like this, where we're having these flip-flops and things. It's the voice of the people, right? And the representation of the people. But if we're watching, pro golfers tee off with a bone saw, what is that going to do to all the people who just only look to sports and only look to entertainment as their sort of guiding light of what they want and what they emulate? It's bad, guys. We need to somehow wake up those institutions and get them to put on the brakes to this. It's not worth the money. It's not worth the money. It's really not.
They've permeated all of the cultural things. Like sports used to be an escape, to watch as a pleasure, to not think about all this shit. And, right from the time the Kaepernick is kneeling, and then they weaponize that, and Trump and Pence and all the bullshit. You can't watch the NFL now without being aware of that. And, in every space, and the vaccines, and some of the players are vaccinated and some players aren't vaccinated, that becomes a thing that draws you back into reality. And now, the whole Brittany Griner thing, which is so awful. I mean, that's a whole other, an issue. I mean, the WNBA came out of David Stern. He made it happen. He knew that it was going to operate at a loss for a while and insisted that it be put into place, which is great, but they're not paid enough. And, these NBA players make, I mean, even now, like reading the salary cap stuff, which I follow, it's like somebody,
Millions.
some fifth best player on the team is making $22 million a year.
Exactly.
And they talk about it like, well, it's 22, we can blah, 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 blah. But $22 million a year is a lot of money for everyone else in society. But
and it's
the
not that
golf
you don't
thing,
deserve that money. It's that
no.
you
It's the
can't leave it
economics
so
of it. But
imbalanced to where people feel like
Yeah.
they have to run away to a regime like Russia so that
To
they
make
can get the money and
Yeah.
understand what those regimes are always going to do. They're always going to do what they're doing right now. They will use you for their ends, for their, they will.
And what
Especially
the ends are,
authoritarian and racist regimes like
Yes.
like Russia. I mean, that let's just be clear. And by the way, Brittany Griner was considered like a star there. Just
Yeah.
think about that. She was considered a star in Russia, and they literally threw her under the bus in a way that, like, the vaping, as if she was a drug trafficker, as if that she was a smuggler. It's actually a part of even our own stereotypical frameworks of the way that we talk about Black people, right? It's like, oh, we can do this because that's easy. People will say yes to that and sign off on it, when it was like vaping cartridges and something that she was actually doing it for medical purposes. I get it, it's not the law in that country, but just think about for a second the way in which they took vaping, which by their law is like maybe $5,000 and maybe a year probation. They're basically saying 9 years and $15,000.
Yeah, basically, that's it. She's done. She's 9 years in, and
That means her whole career is gone.
Right.
I think they're going to get her. I think they're going to trade her for some horrible person. But and part of this is that, I hope, anyway. I mean, that's what
We hope for that, but you also don't want that.
No,
we
it's
want to be able
not.
to take care. Like, we're so, like, it's insane that she couldn't be taken care of for her skills, for what she brought, the talent she brought to the table.
She's like one of the 5 best players in the WNBA, by the way.
Exactly.
She's not some schmo. She's not a scrub.
And also, just be really careful here. Like, this exchange, if it happens, it's not an equal exchange.
No.
They'll get someone far worse to help them with their war. While Brittany just gets the chance to come back home. And I'm not saying that that's not important. I'm saying that level of exchange is nowhere near equal in any way.
Absolutely.
And this country has not always been nice to Black people. So just make sure that we're clear about how we think about this whole thing.
No, this is such an explosive thing, and not in terms of that it would cause friction, but just like everything that comes to the surface in this. We've got to get her out of there. We got to get her out of there. Like, that's not even a question. And it's like, but this is know who you're. It probably feels great to be over there and be paid a whole bunch of money and appropriate amounts of money for what you're offering and what your talent and your skill is and your hard work, and also be this big celebrity and have all of that. Feels great. But understand, it's always going to end like this. And then when Dietmar Clodo is what gets changed with you, and then we find out that he's just put a bomb in and killed a bunch of school children, she's going to wear that? That's awful.
Right, exactly. It's like, I got traded for that person who has done a horrible thing. And also, like, just remember,
violence again happening to her again.
Right. It's something she has to keep living with again and again and again for something.
We haven't done a good job in our culture and social institutions, again, actually being informed and educating people and understanding what we're fucking dealing with on a global stage. Our entertainers, our athletes, our artists are global by nature because we are the United States. That engine is always coming from us. It's always, with the exception of like soccer. We're catching up with the soccer, but everywhere else, music, movies, television, right? Sports, it's us. All the other nations are looking to us and wanting our athletes. This is our culture, and this is how we spread our culture and our ideas and our democracy all over the world. It's how we've always done it. There always are ambassadors, whether you want to be or not, because Everybody's watching you. They're listening to your music. They're watching you on the TV. They're quoting the movie lines that you're famous for. They're watching you play their favorite fucking game and wishing, and they're going to their own courts in wherever the hell they are, in Bosnia, and playing basketball in Africa, doing these things because they've watched the great athletes, right, from America. It's true. So our institutions need to take care of our democracy, and especially not throw the people who are making them all the money and these corporate executive suites to the fucking wolves.
Yes. And by the way, basically the whole thing that Kaepernick was speaking to was about that fact. Like if they decide, if any of those athletes decide to speak back, they lose their jobs too. Like, and what do they do then? And we just aren't being honest about the way in which we see this role in particular. But also, I just want to say, even for Britney, who's like top 5, right? The key was, even while those tanks were lining around Ukraine, they were waiting to grab her.
Yeah. Of course.
They did not throw that first missile until they knew they had her. And then they told us after. So it was part of the plan, unfortunately, because she had been in Russia for 8 years.
But this is where we need to go with everyone. Everyone needs to realize that. They never would have brought her 8 years ago over to Russia and offered that if they didn't know at some point they're going to do this with her. That's what these regimes do. That's how they
build trust.
That's right.
And then they use you later.
That's right.
For whatever their ulterior means. Yeah, exactly. Right?
Yeah.
She probably got paid pretty good money, by the way, during those 8 years.
They all of the good WNBA players, or most of them, have gone to Russia for many years to play. Right. Diana Taurasi used to go all the time. I remember reading an article about it in like Sports Illustrated 8 years ago about this whole sort of thing. But to your point,
it's also on purpose. It's also on purpose.
Yeah. No, and now that's done. Nobody's ever going to go to them.
No one would do it. No one would do anything illegal. Like, LeBron James would not do anything illegal, and you just kind of like, but he doesn't have to go anywhere.
Oh, they'll just put stuff in your suitcases. I'm sorry.
It's like if you're gonna drug traffic, you're not gonna put it in your suitcase. Like, let's just be honest about this conversation, and the way that some people are trying to misrepresent what actually happened. They did charge her with drug trafficking, but let's be clear: vaping is not drug trafficking. And anyone who is trying to pretend like that's actually what happened and what took place is being disingenuous entirely. And just
I can't imagine anyone is, unless they're already Kremlin puppets themselves. So
we got white Americans that,
but these are
you know which ones they are though, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So we come. Listen, if they're the purr clutching, whatever, I'll come for them. But it's, again, just we have to, from the top. We need the folks at the top to get it, to get what we're up against and what our own talent is going to be used for, and maybe start rejecting that. Start rejecting the Saudi blood money, please.
The name of the game, what you said before, is trust washing. This is what they pay for. Phil Mickelson made more money on this Live Golf thing, which is owned by the Saudi. It's funded by the Saudi Sovereign Royal Fund. Okay. He made more money doing this for the last year than he made in his entire career up until that point. It's a staggering amount of money. Like, he made $200 million or something like that. Maybe it's 260, right? To make it all. Now, Greg Norman, who is the head of this Live Golf thing, Greg Norman, who has no scruples whatsoever. It's like, Aussies who come to the United States to take advantage of our Republicans. It's a bad pattern, Rupert Murdoch, cough, cough. But Tiger Woods apparently was offered somewhere on the order of between, 700 and $1 billion to, probably like $750 million to join this tour, and told them to fuck off. So, he did it for golf reasons to some degree because he thinks that the tour is shitty, which is cool. I'm sure he did it because I don't think he likes Greg Norman very much. And he maybe did it for the patriotism. I don't know. He hasn't said that I'm aware of. But what they're trying to do, what they're buying is Phil Mickelson smiling. And, what they hope is Tiger Woods and all these, people that you see in commercials and ads that are selling you this, that, and the other. And they're on TV all the time. Like you said, LB, when we export our culture to other places, Bonesaw wants to be around these guys, and it sends the message that if it's okay with these people, I guess the Bonesaw guy must be okay. I guess the guy that killed the journalist Khashoggi must be fine. I guess the country that produced most of the 9/11 terrorists, it's fine. No problem. Osama bin Laden.
How about the starving children in Yemen? We didn't even get to that.
Yeah, there's bad shit. And the way that they treat the women there and it's a repressive fucking regime. And we countenance it because they have oil, period. Okay. And they're buying the trust. They are trust washing and nothing. And this goes, it's not just sports. It's not just golf. It's all over. It's the entertainment industry. It's social media and these Silicon Valley fucking people. Right. And no, there is no greater symbol, no greater metaphor for trust washing, the disgustingness of these people and this horrible money coming in than Ari Emanuel literally hosing down a pale, plump Elon Musk on a yacht. I mean, that's it. He's literally washing him.
On a yacht.
On a yacht. Yeah. In Greece, probably within like half an hour of whatever Cypriot bank they both use. I don't know. That Wilbur Ross owns part of.
Right.
To look on a map. So yeah. Anyway, that's all I've got with this. I think we really put this to bed. So
I think we took it to him today.
Now,
Shireen, it was great having you.
No, we have one more thing we have to do.
Oh, what do we? Oh, we do. We have one more thing.
We have one more thing we have to do before we say goodbye. We have to do a little Star Trek memorial in memoriam here. Shireen, you have the floor.
Thank you so much for letting me be here. This has been amazing. I'm so excited. I've been trying to keep up with the chat with everyone who's been saying thank you for me being here and the energy that I bring. But I also wanted to bring that same energy about someone who, when I was a child, was really, really important to me. Growing up, I didn't get into tech just randomly. I did start coding at 10 by myself, but there were role models out there. And Nichelle Nichols, who recently passed away at 89, was Uhura on Star Trek. For those of you that don't know, she actually wasn't going to stay in the role. Martin Luther King, her best band, had convinced her to stay. But also, I think some things that people don't realize, that Uhura was actually a Swahili word that came from Uhuru. And many people may not know that every time they were saying her name, they were saying Lieutenant Freedom. And it was such an impactful part of my life and my understanding about we are in space, we are present, we can change the world, we can code, we can be part of what strange new worlds may look like, which is another series, by the way, where Uhura is back as a young woman and sharing, she can speak multiple languages. It's so please go take a look at that, Strange New Worlds too, as they do a legacy to her in that role. But the biggest tribute that they did for her was Michael Burnham in Discovery, Star Trek Discovery, and the first female Black captain in Discovery was a tribute to Uhura and Nichelle Nichols. And there are so many other young women out there now who are in science. She later started to work with NASA, getting girls to code, getting women to want to be scientists that look like me. Mae Jemison is another example. I can go through the list of all the things from that one time period that her existence was so important, that shifted the way so many of us saw the world and how important that was. And she was definitely someone I found to be significant in the way that I saw the world and what the future could look like, and that I could be in the future in a way that most people would not expect. And I thank you for allowing me to share that story about her and how important she was to me.
Well, thank you for coming on and sharing that. That was lovely and beautiful. And R.I.P. And
Yeah.
to Shireen, we'd like to say again, thank you so much for coming on and such a fun, engaging conversation. Please come back at some point, down the line.
Definitely.
I hope we haven't scared you. I don't think we scared you off.
No, you did not.
I don't think it's possible to
end
scare
up
you
in
off.
our 4 a.m. conversation.
You can probably add me to those
went on the whole thing there for about 20
I'll probably
minutes.
be up.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Great.
Once again, as always, wonderful comments, which LB will play some of during the closing credits. We're going to be back next week. Next week is the season finale of the 5/8. Then we'll be back like 3 weeks after that. So, here can I do this with my left hand?
Just wants a vacation, so we're calling it a season finale.
Yeah. You're trying to do the thing, live long and prosper.
I was going to say, I could do it with my right hand.
And prosper.
Live long and prosper. Live long and prosper. All right. Have a good week, everybody. Is this the right button? I think it is.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shireen. Okay. We'll see you next week. Bye everybody.